What Grinds My Gears by Bad Teachers is brought to you today by Solo Cafe, located in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan. Address 191 Magtiguli Sayoli. Phone number plus 993 67 299 229. Again, that's plus 993 67 299 229. Stop by there when next time you find yourself in Turkmenistan and you mention our names, you will get 20% off of all their donors and pizzas. Without any further ado,
Estaba sentado un perro, se cayó el perro y a la mierda el perro, y se va la vida.
hello everyone and welcome to What Grinds My Gears by Mucho Bad Teachers. I'm your host, Spiros. Okay, and I have with me today Stephen. How are you, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Yeah, as usual, I'm here, loud and proud from England, shouting and complaining and queuing and all that crappy stuff we do over here. Yeah, it's good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you and good to hear from you, man. And today we have our first guest of the podcast. So, yeah, now this is our, we're right around 5 million subscribers or so, and another 20 million views. And so this is gonna be a real special podcast because we have with us today a fellow educator, Dr. Alejandro, who I have known in different capacities over several decades. And how are you, Alejandro?
When do I get paid?
He's straight here. I loved it, man. I love this guy. Straight away, you sound like me, man. You get in front of those educators that are going to recruit you and say, where's the fucking money? Where's the fucking money? Yeah. It's like a scene from Family Guy, man. We love it.
Okay, so Alejandro, I might just call you Alex for short. But either way, you're going to see we kind of like do a little bit of homage every now and again to Family Guy. I don't know if you're a fan or if you ever watched the show, but if you're ever lost in some things we say, it's 50% chance that it's a Family Guy reference, and it's just 50% chance that we're just certifiably insane. So one or the other.
Well, so far, I'm completely lost. So I'll assume everything you've said is related to Family Guy. So,
yeah, let's play it safe and say that. Sure.
Let's do that.
A month went by before Andy said 2 words to somebody. As it turned out, that somebody was me.
Vagina boob.
Boys, I gotta stop. Go on, Spyro. Let's hear you, man. Go.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was just going to say, Stephen and I wanted to ask you different aspects of the part of the world that you're in, teaching, and, different things about teaching. And I don't, we'll cover a little bit teaching in COVID-19 and not, but I mean, not too much because we're sort of phasing out of that anyway, it seems. But Stephen, what were you going to say?
Well, hey, boys, I've got to steam right in and, what the fuck is going on in the world? Even in England now, we're putting down statues of people that represent imperialistic, historical problems. Where is the learning and development here, boys? Has no one learned anything? Are these statues not there to remind us of what not to do next time? Are we not sanitizing history? Is that not deleting education? Come on, boys, discuss.
Well, you obviously know, like in the States over here, they've been taken down. It's not just now with what's going on, but even before there's been a sort of force behind taking down certain Civil War statues, Confederate statues, I should say.
Is this not deleting what things we've learned before? Are we now deleting education? Are we deleting our knowledge by doing this?
Let me ask you this, actually. Since you're in England, you might know this a little bit more. Do they still have the house where certain Nazi, like even Hitler, like, are they still around? Like, can you still go to these places, or is all that also being torn down? I'm just curious.
You know what, man? I have no idea. I would like to think these things are still there to remind us of what we learned and all the shitty screw-ups we did in the past, and try to make sure that this young, stupid generation that we all have to educate on a daily basis, God help us. Yeah, these frigging idiots in the university classrooms now moaning about their professors' grades and they could have done better and they should have done better and all that bullshit. I don't know, man. I'd like to think these things are still open so we can maintain some kind of credible learning and education perspective so we don't make the same mistakes again. Take a breath. But I don't think so. I mean, if I said to my friends, check it out, right? So there I go, I go, hey boys, I tell you what I'm doing this Saturday. I'm going to go and see where Hitler used to live in London. Now, what kind of response do you think I'm going to get from people?
Did he used to live in London? That's the first thing I would ask.
he had a small place that he
did. Yeah, absolutely. Allegedly, he had a small place in London. There you go. Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, we certainly don't want to erase history. I guess it comes down to, what statues specifically, right? What's the purpose of a statue? It's typically to glorify someone or to glorify an event.
Right.
So if it's kept to just these sorts of commemorations that are there to glorify individuals whom today are looked at in a different light, then I can understand removing them, not tearing them down, maybe in a bringing them down in a more, a planned manner, but certainly that doesn't erase history, and we shouldn't erase history in any way. Here in the U.S., we have George Washington on the $1 bill, right?
Yeah.
George Washington certainly, as great as he was in some ways, many would argue that he was not so great in other ways, especially from a modern lens. So do we remove him from the $1 bill going forward? I don't know.
Well, you know what? It's really interesting. And what a super diplomatic answer you've given there, Alejandro. Personally, I say, look, leave the statue up, get that plaque, change the plaque on the bottom. If said, this is Joe Bloggs. He was an amazing person. Just change it to this guy was a cunt. And it's nice and simple. It's easy. It's simple. Change the messaging on the plaque at the bottom. Tell everybody the guy was a see you next Tuesday and leave the statue in place. Come on, man.
So, Stephen, what do you think would go on the plaque for Spyro statue?
Oh, that's a good question. When he was in London, we could have put on there something like, this is a fat pizza eating cunt. Which I don't think is unreasonable, Spyro, is it? Friday night, Spyro. Friday nights at the Brovotel, Spyro. Come on, man.
Well, considering I'm skinnier than both of you two, but I do love pizza. It's one of those mixed messages, you know what I mean? But I do love pizza. It's true.
Pizza can bring us together, really. I think we haven't focused on it. Maybe we should have a statue of a pizza that would never get torn down.
Yeah, but you know what Alex brought up, though, was true, because if we continuously look at history through modern moral lenses, so this present focus, think of it like this. Think of all the things that are done today that will not be tolerated in 20 years by the next generation. So that's what I always tell even students. Think of all the things that you're doing today that are completely acceptable, but in 20 years' time are going to be, oh my God, can you believe what they used to do back in 2020? Those college students, how unacceptable it is today in 2040 or 2050. So
You know what, Spiro? I'd like to think that half of my students were awake in my class to even remember what the class was about, let alone remember 20 years ago when they get there. You know what I mean, man? Seriously.
well, that brings me to I want to ask you a question, Alejandro. What's the hardest part of being a professor today? You've been doing this for a couple decades. And I'm not talking, forget the COVID-19 scenario. Just comparing today being a professor to, when you first started a couple decades ago.
Yeah, I've been primarily delivering education online, so the change has primarily followed the technological advances. I mean, when I started teaching online 15 years ago, it was nothing like today. The content was very static, very bland. Now it's very dynamic, and so it kind of has brought about a more technologically competent student, right? Someone who's the student today, the average student today, doesn't know a life without the internet. The average student today doesn't know about accountability, because they're free to express themselves however they want in the most anonymous fashion. So I think education has kind of mirrored advances in technology and has kind of followed what's happening in society. But I do believe that the student today is a better communicator with the written word than several years ago, because most of the communications then nowadays, or much of it, is written, whether it's email, whether it's text. So if you're not able to express yourself well in the written format, you're going to lose out. So even though maybe face-to-face communication has taken a step back, certainly the ability to convey your feelings through the written word, I think, exists much more today than it did back then.
That's interesting. I've got a follow-up question for that.
Yeah.
Are you having less sex with students now than you did 20 years ago?
Well, if they all looked like you, then yes.
Yeah. Well, that's fair enough. I mean, that's a given. I'm 112, but whatever floats your boat, really, Alejandro. Yeah, I mean, Spiro, when he was in London, he seemed to be having more sex with university students than he was in the US. Is that right, Spiro?
Well, I mean, yeah. That's my answer.
Yeah, okay, you heard it here first. To the 5 million listeners, it was a simple yeah. It was a simple yeah from Spiro. I mean, congratulations! Let's have a round of applause for that. Yeah, man, I know. I just wondered whether or not. I mean, Alejandro, you talk about these students are more technically minded and they embrace technology. So I guess you're having online sex. Maybe you're uploading that to Pornhub. I don't know. Is that reasonable?
Sure. Yes.
yeah. I'm sure. Look, it's healthy to get this kind of stuff out. I can see that Trump has had a good effect on both of you with monosyllabic answers. Thank you, chaps. That's very insightful.
I do have actually.
Thank you. I do my best. Yeah.
I do have another question though with that. So, you said it goes with the technology, basically you being a professor today as opposed to, let's go 15, 20 years ago, whatever. And you brought up that a lot of what you do is online. I mean, that's pretty common in general across the board around the world. Where do you see the technology taking us with education or online education in the next 10 or 15 years? I mean, here we are now, we're talking to each other through Zoom. And I mean, there's obviously plenty of portals we could do this with. So what do you see it in, online education? Because it just kind of seems like, even aside from COVID-19, we're sort of being drawn out of the classroom anyway and going to more online features.
Yeah. So, the average online student 15 years ago was the adult who's already working and with a family who left education for one reason or another, when they were younger, and now they're re-entering uh, academia because they have the ability now, or they found that they can only get so far in their career without a degree, etc. So I think the demographic has changed nowadays. The fresh out of high school college student, the 18-year-old, is considering online education. It's no longer a specialized sort of situation that it appeals to, if you will. So I think because of that, there's going to be a much more live, what's called synchronous component, because with the working adult who's not at home all day, the asynchronous, or the component that's not live, where they just come in at night after they put their kids to sleep and they do work. The younger student who's more dedicated full time to his or her education, will be doing it throughout the day. So I think there will be more of a live component. It will mirror more the traditional classroom environment with debates and so forth, kind of like what we're doing here.
That's interesting. I reckon we're being moved out of the classroom, Spyro, because these students aren't coming to class and they're copying and pasting their assignments from some other person at some other university, or they're just using Wikipedia. They don't need us, they think.
Well, actually, this question's sort of both for the both of you, because I want to get the U.S. and the European answer to this. Grading, talk to me about grading today versus 10 or 15 years ago. So how you grade students in the classroom, online, whatever, versus 10, 15 years ago. So Alejandro, you first, please.
Well, in terms of the criteria I use to evaluate their work.
So basically, how liberal or conservative, how strict you may be compared today, or not strict, to 10, 15, 20 years ago. Okay. Actually, why don't we hear Stephen, because I know Stephen's got a pot full of spoo for this. Go ahead, Stephen. Stephen's going to, and then we'll get to you, Alejandro.
I tell you, man, Alejandro sounds like he's not graded a paper in his life. He's the kind of guy that just chucks it down the stairs and the heaviest one gets the highest grade. I get that, Alejandro. I really do, man. Grading in this country is just ridiculous. Anecdotally, or some peer-reviewed research suggests that the average mark has gone up from 58 to 64. So for an assignment, so now everybody's getting a classification, a 2-1 between 60 and 70. So they've pushed up the average grade has gone up somewhere around 6 marks. You've got, in some of the private education centres, you've got chronic overmarking. You've got deans, funnily enough, some so-called American universities, they're not really a university, you know what I'm talking about, so-called American university in London, where you've got the deans of the undergraduate schools, sending emails to say, dear Mr. Humphrey, 30% of your class needs to get an A. I said, well, if you want 30% to get an A, you change the marks. I'm not doing it. They're pushing the boundaries of integrity and ethical, let alone moral conduct here. So there's that tendency to overgrade. So it means the qualification, these kids are coming out with pieces of paper and going, oh, look, I'm really bright. And I got my degree. And really they haven't. They're not that smart. It's been overmarked. It's been overgraded. The pressure, of course, to push students through years 1, 2, and 3, so universities can get their finance in years 1, 2, and 3, because now we charge a lot of money over here for education, even for it depends on the course, but even a averagely good course at a good university, good MSc in marketing, for example, you're looking at 10 or 12 grand from a half decent university. And if you're an international student, more like 20. Now, so if that student doesn't pass and they don't progress, you don't get your yearly revenue, and that's what it's all about. And they've spent billions over here from that revenue on land and property. So even in my own town, land and property, that's all they've done. They built new stuff for the students, new places, new study blocks, as well as new accommodation. Now that's all driven by money, and that's all about passing and progression. You guys know the term well. So it's a frigging mess. And I'll tell you what, in some private centres in particular, so private providers that have been validated by universities to run their programs or accredited to have validated programs run by private centres, you'd be amazed at the minimum requirements for international students to come in is they have to have a certain level of English. I'm sure you're familiar with that. We call it an IELTS. I can't even remember what the level is. It might be a minimum level of 6 or 7 or something like that, whatever the scale is. Believe me, gentlemen, there are plenty of candidates that do not have the required level of English to even study. So there's a massive fraud at the hands of the money. And then, of course, whose problem is it when that student is in the classroom that's at the wrong level, can't speak English, doesn't come to class, doesn't participate, and produces work that's been ghostwritten? Oh no, that's my frigging problem as a tutor. And now I'm the one that has to make up a grade. For example, a colleague of mine just recently at one of these slightly questionable places, he graded a piece of work at 28%, right? Now, in some of the worst universities around in England, you can pass your course so you can pass your module or your courseworks with 40%. So ostensibly 60% of your paper can be total shit, but you can still pass a course and get a degree. Now that's one other issue I don't agree with. So this guy's got, he's got a lot of integrity, this guy, like many of us, and he's got 28%. So his boss turns around, the program leader, director, whatever, turns around and says, yeah, that paper needs to go through at 40. So now he's got to find 12 marks from a paper that was only graded at 28 and pass this individual. And that is happening all the time. It's a chronic problem. Overgrading, fraudulent grading, people running around questioning professors in terms of their marking abilities. I've just had it myself recently. I've failed a candidate. It was one of the worst papers I'd seen for a while. And I got an email, oh, you've done it wrong, and I expected more, and I've compared my work to other people's in the group, all the usual stuff, right? And so first line of my email response was, okay, thanks very much for your email. Please send me a copy of your teaching qualifications, your assessment qualification, and your degree in the subject I teach. It's kind of bad, but that's how it is over here in a lot of places, but not everywhere. The good universities, some of them still maintain, a level of integrity. But I do think private education provision has seriously damaged the British reputation in education. It's too expensive. And I would like to think that this pandemic will seriously affect some private centres, that they go out of business. That's what I'm hoping for. Sorry, boys, that was a bit of a rant.
Well, that is what grinds your gears, huh? Cha-cha-ching.
Yeah.
Okay, so Alejandro, so you get a window over there into what's going on in England. Basically, in a nutshell, they've been copying in England, not only there, but the for-profit American model. It's spread like wildfire into Europe now as well. So, and that's what we're getting into with the grading. Have you noticed any difference in your grading structures or pressure from the top, grading one way or the other today versus, a decade or two ago?
Can I just add to that? I'd be interested to know, Alejandro, about the changing the structure of rubrics, because I've got some comment on that as well. But you first.
Yeah, well, certainly truth has become more subjective. So the substantiation that students used to provide for their papers was typically more, more scholarly, more peer reviewed. Nowadays, a lot of it is, from subjective type sources, right? And so the kind of the line between what's fact and what's opinion has been grayed. So whereby I would maybe evaluate a paper many years ago according to the reliability and the credibility of the sources used. Nowadays, not so much. So that's one way. Students have a lot of power, especially in for-profit.
Too much.
For-profit institutions that are at the end of the day businesses that are selling education.
Yeah.
So a student is viewed as a customer. So if a student did not, receive the type of service that they feel they're paying for, and that service often is, the grade that they want, they can push back. So as instructors, we're put in a defensive position to have to, justify, the burden is on us to justify why a student received a certain grade. So, about rubrics, well, these have become more prevalent because they are, a more objective way of grading. So there's always that, that risk in the back of a teacher's mind that, if the student isn't happy, they're going to push back, they're going to escalate the situation, and then the onus is going to be on me to justify what I naturally did. So
yeah, that's interesting. I think the rubric is misused. I mean, I've seen oh my goodness, I've seen a rubric with 12 elements on it. I'll tell you what, you try failing a paper when there are 12 rubric elements. I mean, it's almost impossible. You can allocate low marks to each section, but you can get to a 40% quite quickly with 12 rubric elements. It's kind of nonsense, and I'm not sure there's any research that the research about grading is definitive. But I wouldn't necessarily agree that rubrics make things more objective. I wouldn't necessarily say rubrics make marking more effective. It's an interesting debate. I think the research on grading is mixed, or the effective way to grade. And all this typing feedback. I mean, I know some of these online systems, I've tried them before, but I get a lot of resistance that you can record your feedback verbally. And I think that's the way forward, really. But it's kind of more conversational. It's easier, I think, in some ways to pull out verbally what's wrong with a piece of work than have to try and indicate on the paper and then write it under the rubric. I mean, it's painfully 21st goddamn century. But yeah, it's interesting to hear that, Alejandro. There's lots of similarities. And you're right. Hey, maybe I'm just annoyed that I haven't made 27 billion, excuse me, from privatization of education. I'm not walking around with 28 million in the bank. You know what I mean? So it might just be sour grapes on my part, man. But it is a problem. And I wonder, what's the logical extension of this? Yeah, that we're passing people that shouldn't be passed, that the knowledge, that they don't have the knowledge, but we say they do. Where are we in 100 years?
Yeah, well, the byproduct of that is a watering down of, or a devaluing of a college education. So,
man. Yeah,
that's ultimately what it comes down to. There are the average school has, what seems like an infinite number of second chances for students. It's almost, impossible to not complete an education unless the student runs out of funds, right? That'll happen quickly. But
Yeah, man.
you know, other than that, it's you obviously want to give the opportunity of an education to everyone, regardless of their upbringing, regardless of their ability to pay.
I'm
But
okay with that. Yeah.
yeah, but you also do not want to devalue or bring down the top producers, the hardest workers, the smartest among us. So
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, if you devalue education and we get people in the wrong jobs and things like that. I mean, we've seen leaders of country that are probably not fit for purpose, in senior jobs in government that shouldn't be there. Maybe they're not of the right smarts. Maybe they haven't got the right background. I mean, are we storing up a major problem in terms of the devaluing of education and the recruitment of people into the wrong place because we think they can, but they can't? Having said that, and this is another topic really, so I'm getting off topic, boys. You're going to have to shut me up, Spyro, in a second. Really we should be recruiting for outcomes, behaviours and a willingness to relearn. There's loads of evidence to show that GPA or the course you passed, or whether you got a first or a second degree from the UK, what you got it in, there's plenty of evidence to show that none of that shit makes any difference in terms of performance a lot of the time.
Steve, you just brought up that we should be recruiting for outcomes, and I know you're a Jordan Peterson fan, and he hates doing that for outcomes. He believes in equal inputs, but he hates outputs as far as let's say something like this, recruiting for outputs. But anyway, that's just a side. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah.
So I do believe that the current educational system, because it's so it's basically become controlled by the for-profit entities. And
yes, agreed.
Yeah, and so a student who comes in for a 4-year degree certainly that's income for 4 years, right? The school does not want the student to drop out in the first semester because look how much they've lost, right? So it's difficult. I understand balancing the academic rigor with business realities. That's a challenge.
Yeah.
But everything is changing, and I do hope that with time there will be a sort of stability that's reached, and whereby the value of a degree is maintained.
Cool.
They already say that the goal a couple decades ago used to be to get your bachelor's degree, and now pretty much you hear a lot that the master's degree is the new bachelor's degree. So and you have so many people getting their masters that this didn't happen decades ago. And then even the PhDs. I mean, think about how many people are earning or getting their PhDs the past few years compared to, let's say, 30 years ago. 30 years ago, it was
Spyro got one.
Yeah, exactly. If
Spyro got one. That should tell you, right?
Just give them to anybody, huh? That's the thing is, it used to be such an exclusive club 30, 40 years ago. They really busted your chops to get it. And I'm talking about your committee but today it's, because there's money behind it.
Man. Spyro, you're right. I mean, I don't know how much you guys paid for your PhD certificates and where you got them from. I guess maybe you've gone at the print shop, but I think you boys are right. It used to be an exclusive club, but you know what? Where are these super skilled PhD blah blah people in times of crisis when we've got global pathogens to control, and my government over here doesn't know its ass from its elbow, no idea what they're doing about anything to do with COVID. They don't know. So I swear half their advisors have bought their PhDs off the internet as well.
Let me ask you guys something, though. It's related to this. What would happen if the U.S. government, and for that matter, the English government as well, did not support student loans. In other words, it's student loans that were backed by English government and the U.S. government, because a lot of students today, the majority of students today, have some kind of student loans in the U.S. And from my time in England, they were just a couple steps behind, but a lot of students there as well. What would happen if the politicians of both countries said, no more student loans, at least not backed anymore by the U.S. government or by their respective governments? What would happen to what's going on today with education?
See, that's interesting, Spyro. A lot of people wouldn't do it, but I tell you what, it's not the government that's in control of loans. It's the financial services sector. And so, I mean, they sell student loans in this country at an eye-watering percentage, and it's only ever about one thing when it comes to credit facilities and loans from that sector. It isn't a government in control. It would never happen over here.
Alejandro?
I think it would have a positive effect in one hand and a negative effect in the other hand. So, in order for a university here to be able to accept federal funding, they have to maintain certain requirements that are put forth by the Department of Education and their various accreditors. So these are usually very stringent, and they have an academic focus as well as a social focus and all of that. So I do think for a school to participate in that, in other words, to be able to enroll students who have federal loans, they have to meet certain standards. On the other hand, I think if that system did not exist, tuition would probably be much less. So I don't know. I think there are definitely some issues with the way things are now, but I don't believe the solution would be to not back student loans.
Yeah, great. Interesting. Well, I think, sorry, Spyro, to interrupt. I think Alejandro's car's just turned up, hasn't it? He's on his way.
Yeah. His limousine. I do. Can I?
Come on, Spyro. Get rid of this guest, man. Come on.
One last question, Alejandro. If you could go back in time, would you still become a professor? So if you could go back 15, 20 years ago, would you still?
Oh, Christ. I didn't know we were doing a nostalgia piece tonight.
Well, I want to know. I mean, he's been doing it now for a couple decades, and would you still want to be a professor? And would you recommend it to a son, a nephew, or a daughter, and so forth?
Sure. Stephen, can you play some background music while I answer this, please?
You know what? Oh, Alejandro.
I'm gonna do it. Trust me. I'm gonna do exactly that.
He's going to do it in post-production, but I was going to sit here and go, seriously, Spyro.
I would definitely recommend this field for anyone who has any interest. It's opened up all kinds of opportunities for me, especially with with online education. It's given me a lot of freedom. It's allowed me to spend more time with my family.
Nice.
I have seen it evolve. I think it'll continue to evolve long after I'm done. But it's something that is part of who I am. It's something that just by me being who I am and doing the work I do, it influences my children, influences others. So just to answer your question in a more direct way, I would not change a thing, no.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. Makes me happy. Makes me happy about my own choices. I enjoy it as well. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it. Really. I wouldn't have done it this long if I didn't do it. Alejandro, we want to thank you. We're actually going to do. We want to thank you for coming on today. We're actually about to do a piece that we do. It's called relationship advice. You're welcome to stay on if you'd like. We get these emails and people ask us for relationship advice. Like I said, you're welcome to stay on and give your feelings on it. Either way, thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much,
Alejandro.
Thank you. I'm going to drop off. I draw the line at relationship advice. So
Gotcha.
I bet your wife is glad to hear it. See you, man.
Cheers. Thank you.
Take care, Alejandro. Take care.
Take care, man. Bye.
Şeriyem diğer adam Oran tаңдым маржанар мелери шерши Аң мен аралбатын Қанға дулы олсын Орай курай Шерши
Oh,
All
good
right.
guess. Good guess, Spyro.
Yeah. I thought it's always good to get like I said, fellow diverse. When I say diverse in the area of education, like different areas of education. Get them on here.
I agree. I've organised a guest for us next week. Someone we both know very well from the UK.
All right.
To add alternative perspectives.
All right. Great. You have to give me the beans on that later on.
I'll give you the skinny on that after we sign off. And for our 5 million followers, of course, we're always interested to know, get your feedback on the level of bullshit that we've been speaking this evening and how much you don't care a crap about what we've said. So, please send your comments. But you got another email from relationship advice after last week.
Oh, yeah. We've been getting quite a few, actually. So, again, our email is vaginaboobadteacher at gmail.com. Now, again, that's, it's bad teacher vagina boob. I got it backwards.
Oh, good grief. Yeah, right. Get it sorted. Come on.
Sorry about that. Bad teacher vagina boob at gmail.com. Again, that's bad teacher vagina boob at gmail.com. Or, of course, you could just leave a comment underneath the YouTube video. So here is an advice-seeking gentleman, a 33-year-old guy, and here's his email. I'm a 33-year-old man and have been in a relationship with my girlfriend for the last 7 years. I love her a lot, but unfortunately, her recent behavior made it very difficult for me to trust her. She had gone on an official tour with one of her male colleagues, and after coming back, she confessed that she had a physical relationship with him. Strangely, after a few days, she denied that. I would also like to mention that she had cheated twice, but every time she promised she would be loyal to me and would never cheat again. Now, we are almost nearing the end of our relationship, but there's still a part of me that doesn't want it to end. Please tell me what I should do. Should I give her another chance? Stephen, what do you think?
Oh my God, I think I'm conflicted. I think I might have had the relationship with this girl. What's this guy's surname?
It's anonymous.
Oh shit. It sounds awfully like the girl that that I've been seeing on the side recently. It kind of fits. What's this guy's name again? George?
If you want it to be, it can be George Shore.
Well, look, man, I mean, you didn't tell me too much, but we've been having a bit of communication. She is a bit of a wild. Look, if it's this girl, and I think it might be, and I'm sorry, this 33-year-old guy, right? I'm sorry, man, it was me. I'm pretty sure it was me. It's a little ironic that you should write to us and find out that it was me that was banging your missus. I can't apologise. Basically, I mean, of course, I'm biased. I mean, leave her, man. Leave her.
Leave her, huh?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
What do you think, Spirit? I mean, look, man, I'm biased. There's a hell of a conflictual view that I've got because obviously, I think she's coming over again Friday, but don't tell the guy that, please. So, you know, what do you? I tell you what, Spiro, screw this guy. What should I do?
Yeah, that's a good point. What should you do? Well, she's obviously cheated on you with her boyfriend and some other two guys. So to you, Stephen, and to Mr. Anonymous over here, you're both basically having sex with each other. So be careful what you're doing on the side.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I'll tell you what, man. I'll see her one more time. Yeah, and then I'm gonna email you next week and ask you what I should do after that. How's that?
Was this email by you? And we're just finding out?
Could be, man. Could be. You know what? I'd fuck with you, man.
Yeah. In all seriousness, though, if she's cheated on you twice before and made promises to be loyal to you, to never cheat again, yeah, I mean, you know, what's the expression? Yeah, I mean, unless you're like some hideous 33-year-old guy, which I don't think you are, you know, unless
he is.
Unless you're some hideous guy with really bad BO, you know, body odor, I would just say, hey man, you have better days ahead. I really would, you know. I mean, what are you gonna do? You can't stay with somebody who keeps cheating on you. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can give it three or four times, three or four cheats, probably acceptable these days. But after that, man, show some goddamn respect for yourself, man.
Yeah, especially if she's cheating on you with Stephen over here. I mean, you really need to show some respect for yourself. You know, because if she was cheating on you with, like, you know, Brad Pitt, I mean, you can brag about that.
Yeah, that's it, exactly, man. I mean, seriously, I'm no cat. Oh, dude.
All right. So again, please email us your questions or if you're seeking advice. But in all seriousness, dump the girl. You just move on with life and you know,
get the hell out of there, man.
Yeah, dump the girl. And if the girl's cheating on you with Stephen, send an email as well. Again, that's badteachervaginaboob@gmail.com. badteachervaginaboob@gmail.com. And before I let you go, Stephen, we're also going to have in the future another segment in our podcast. And, you know, this podcast is already really different from other podcasts because it's really, even though, you know, we're educators, it's just a really somewhat stupid podcast, but that's okay. We kind of like it that way.
We love stupidity. We're learning from our students, man.
Yeah, you know, it's okay. It's all right. So the new segment, and I didn't talk to you, I think, or maybe I did talk to you a little bit about it, but I figured, you know what, let's not even call it something in English. Let's just call it something in another language. And the new
great.
segment,
how about Greek?
Sure. And I thought, let's call this segment Faya di Bucciatora. Again, that's Faya di Bucciatora. What does that mean? It means eat the dick now. So basically, what this means, it's an expression in Greek. It means like, well, you got some bad choices in front of you. Either way, you're screwed. So just choose one and move on with your life, kind of thing. So in this segment, in this segment that we'll start it next week, we're going to present two horrible scenarios, and you have to choose one of them. You actually have to choose one of them. So, you know, for example, and let's do a test run of this right now. And this will be more formal.
Okay, man, I'm ready.
So your first scenario of fai de bucciatora, eat the dick now, is every time you go to class as the professor, every time you go to class on that morning, you have to put half a cup of peanut butter on your butt. You have to smear it in there, and then put on your underwear, put on your suit, and off you go. Take the train, go to London, go to work, and And obviously, when you come home, you can take it off and wash up and do what you got to do. And the other scenario is that every time you go to a funeral in the future, and unfortunately, as we get older, they sort of pop up. But every time you go to a funeral in the future, you have to speak with a strong Scottish accent. And obviously, everyone's going to know that you're not Scottish. So when you're sitting there and you're saying, my condolences, and I'm sorry, you're going to be my condolences and everything like that. Go.
Oh man, well, I tell you, man, for me, I'm going with the Scottish. I'm from Aberdeen, you know. I gotta go with the Scottish, man.
Can you do a Scottish accent for us if you are at a funeral and giving your condolences and all that stuff?
No.
Can you give us the example right now?
I can't do a Scottish accent, man.
Well, that's the funny part of it. You have to try.
Exactly, man. So there you go. My condolences. Which is Irish, I think. Come on, man. You know what, man? I hate you, man. I should have gone for the other option because there is no video. It was me. It was a stupid choice on my part. You get.
So you go with the Scottish accent at every funeral for the rest of your life. Gotcha.
I would if I had to, man, but I tell you what, that was a bad choice for me right now, I tell you. Anyway, man, get out of here.
Well, you can switch it up. You want to do the peanut butter instead?
I'm not doing anything on video, man. Forget about it.
Oh, no one's going to know that you have the peanut butter on your behind. The only person that's going to know is you,
I understand that, but I'm not demonstrating it right now, man. Seriously.
Yeah, but you're probably not going to be sitting a lot that day, though. You're probably going to be standing a lot. Oh, boy.
Oh. Okay, man.
Well, good talking to you again.
Man.
Mr. Humps. And again, next week, we're
Catch
on.
you next week. You've got the guest.
I guess we'll have a guest again next week. Either way, even if we don't, it'll be the same old bad teachers talking.
Same old drivel. You got it, man.
All right, man. You have a good night over there.
Take care. See you, listeners. Bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.